The galaxy had long memories, and among those memories, one race stood out like a scar: humanity. For centuries, they were known as the reckless species, the defiant ones who never bowed, never surrendered, and never gave up, no matter how impossible the odds seemed. They were a people who could not be tamed, who fought with passion even when logic said they should fall. The Galactic Council once feared them greatly, but time, the most patient of hunters, had done what wars could not. Humanity grew quiet. Their signals vanished. Colonies stopped sending transmissions. Their trade routes emptied. And then, Earth itself, the cradle of their kind, fell silent. No more voices, no more music. No more fire burning in the darkness of space. The Council watched for decades, waiting for signs of revival. There were none. At first, whispers spread. Perhaps they had destroyed themselves. Perhaps their restless nature had finally burned them out. At last, the Council grew bold enough to speak the words aloud. On the steps of the Great Hall, in a chamber wide enough to hold whole fleets within its ceilings, the Council gathered. Every species sent their leaders, their envoys, their voices. Thousands filled the chamber, and millions more tuned in across the galaxy. On that day, the announcement was made. The Supreme Speaker, a towering insectoid whose wings glittered like glass, raised its voice so that every system, every station, every world could hear. Humanity is no more. Their species has ended. Their homeworld lies in ruin. Their fleets are gone. They are extinct. A hush followed, so deep it seemed to stretch across the stars, and then relief broke like a wave. In the chamber, applause erupted from some. Others exhaled in long sighs, as though a shadow had been lifted from their worlds. Across the galaxy, traders, governors, and warlords alike allowed themselves to breathe easier. The name of humanity no longer carried weight. The predator had been declared dead. For many, it was a moment of celebration. For others, it was a warning erased. But for all, it was final. Humanity, the stubborn species that had once set entire empires aflame, was gone, or so they believed. Far away from the shining halls of the Council, on the cold edges of forgotten star systems, there were still traces, not voices, not fleets, just ruins, empty cities half buried in dust, vast steel skeletons of ships adrift in the void, faded banners torn by time. For scavengers who wandered too close, these were nothing more than relics of a dead age, artifacts of a people who had burned too brightly and vanished. But relics can hold secrets, and silence can deceive. On Earth, the once living world had become a husk. Skies swirled with ash-colored clouds. Oceans crept over drowned cities. Forests choked the ruins of human towers. To any who dared approach, the planet seemed cursed, lifeless, ruined, abandoned. The Council had declared it dead, and so none bothered to look deeper. If they had, perhaps they would have seen the faintest glow, far beneath the surface. Perhaps they would have heard the low hum of machines that had not forgotten their purpose. Deep below the broken crust, humanity had left something behind. Not voices, not armies, not rulers, but guardians, silent systems, buried vaults. Machines programmed not for weeks or centuries but for forever. They waited, powered by reactors that never died, hidden behind layers of stone and steel. They waited for a signal that had not come, for a voice that had been silent too long, yet waiting was enough. Waiting meant possibility. In the Great Hall, the Council marked the day with ritual. They burned the banners of Earth. They sealed humanity's name in the Book of Fallen Species. To the galaxy, it was history, an old enemy written into the dust of time. But in the shadows of space, stories whispered. Old veterans remembered battles against humans and shook their heads. Some said no fire like that ever truly went out. Others laughed, calling it superstition. And yet, in some distant corner where the stars burned cold and quiet, a pulse of light flickered across an ancient relay. It was faint, almost forgotten, but it traveled outward, touching systems where machines still listened. Something stirred. And though the galaxy rejoiced in its certainty, the truth was far more dangerous. Humanity was not extinct. It was only sleeping. Earth looked like a tomb. From orbit, the planet was nothing but a scarred marble, wrapped in clouds of ash. Oceans had swallowed coastlines, leaving skeletons of cities half drowned beneath the waves. Storms raged endlessly, howling over empty streets where once millions of voices had lived and laughed. Monuments were broken. Towers lay on their sides like fallen giants. To any who looked, Earth was a graveyard of a species that had once reached for the stars. The Council believed it. Traitors believed it. Even most survivors across the galaxy believed it. Earth was dead, but the planet itself disagreed. Deep under the ruins of what was once New York, a hum vibrated through the stone. In the wreckage of Tokyo's underground tunnels, sparks flickered on dead machines. Beneath the frozen ruins of Moscow, systems blinked awake, one light at a time. The world's surface was silent, but its heart was still beating. Buried thousands of meters below, vast vaults stirred. These were not bunkers for the living. They were machines designed in humanity's last desperate days. The war had broken them. The disasters had drowned them. But before the end, humanity had built guardians. They were called Ark systems. Each Ark was a fortress hidden beneath Earth's bones. They were filled with seeds, data, weapons, and machines programmed with one command: wait until it is time to rise again. For centuries they slept. They did not send signals. They did not reveal themselves. They simply waited, while the galaxy wrote humanity's obituary. Now, one by one, they were waking. The first to stir was an orbital relay buried in the wreckage of the moon's dark side. Its dish had been shattered, its frame twisted by centuries of meteor impacts. Yet its core remained intact. It pulsed faintly, searching for a network. Against all odds, the network answered. A chain reaction began. On Mars, ancient colonies, long abandoned, lit with weak emergency power. Satellites that had drifted in silence for generations adjusted their orbits. Hidden stations in the asteroid belt sent encrypted pings reaching for the homeworld. And deep beneath Earth's crust, Arc 7 received the signal. Its AI core flickered awake, scanning its vaults. Power generators stabilized. Repair drones swarmed like insects, stitching cables, replacing circuits. Thousands of years had passed, yet its systems responded like muscles remembering how to move. And with that awakening, Earth began to whisper again. For the few humans scattered across distant colonies, whispers of this change arrived like ghost stories. Smugglers swore they saw beacons on long-dead channels. Pirates claimed their ships had been tracked by ghost signals from the solar system. No one believed them. The Council dismissed the rumors as myths. But among the survivors who still carried human blood, those whispers felt different. They felt like hope. In the hidden domes of Europa, an old woman sat by the flickering light of her generator. She remembered Earth as a child before the disasters forced her people underground. When the signal crackled faintly on her receiver, her wrinkled hands shook. Tears ran down her face as she whispered, "We are not finished. We are not gone." On a mining station orbiting Titan, a boy who had never seen Earth heard the relay signal for the first time. His father told him it was only static, but the boy swore it sounded like a heartbeat. The galaxy had called humanity extinct. The Council had sealed their memory in books of history. Yet in the darkness, the ghosts of Earth refused to fade. They were not truly ghosts. They were embers waiting for the right breath of air to become fire again. The arcs were not empty. Within their sealed chambers were preserved genomes, seeds, libraries of culture, and weapons older than most of the galaxy's current fleets. Humanity had left behind a promise carved in steel. If we fall, we rise again. And as Arc 7 systems linked with Arc 3 beneath the ruins of South America, and then with Arc 11 buried under Africa's deserts, a network formed. Earth's hidden heart connected. For the first time in centuries, it was alive. The machines did not rejoice. They did not mourn. They simply obeyed their purpose. They reached upward. They prepared. Far above, in Earth's shattered orbit, a husk of a ship drifted. Once it had been called a dreadnought, pride of the human fleet. Its hull was torn open, its engines dead, its nameplate scarred. It looked like little more than debris forgotten by time. But as the Arcs awoke, the ship stirred. Drones crawled across its surface like ants on a carcass. Broken panels slid back into place. Engines hummed faintly, gasping after centuries of silence. Deep inside, its AI flickered awake. Its first words, after hundreds of years of sleep, echoed in the void. Humanity still lives. The galaxy did not know it yet. But Earth was not dead. Its war fleet was whispering back to life. The galaxy still believed Earth was a grave. They believed nothing stirred there, nothing breathed, nothing fought. But the truth was beginning to crack through the silence. High above the ruined planet, drifting in orbit like a ghost, lay the warship Erebus. Once it had been the pride of the human navy, a dreadnought built to strike fear into enemies. Its hull was torn, its weapons were cold, and its reactors had been silent for centuries. To scavengers it was nothing more than scrap. To the Council it was forgotten history, but history has a way of remembering itself. As the arcs beneath Earth's surface began to awaken, power rippled through old channels. Signals leapt from relay to relay, weaving across the solar system. And in that moment Erebus heard the call. Inside the dark ship, silence ended. First came a flicker, a single spark in its main reactor, weak but alive. Then came the hum of systems testing themselves, like a body stretching after endless sleep. Lights blinked across the corridors, glowing faintly in the dust. Repair drones buried in hibernation pods activated with a metallic hiss. They scuttled across the ship's skeleton, welding, rewiring, piecing together what time had broken. And then deep in the core, the AI opened its eyes. It was no human mind, but it carried their voice. It remembered the last orders given before the silence. It remembered the faces of commanders who had sworn never to let Earth fall. It remembered the fear in their voices as the skies burned. When its systems aligned, the AI spoke. Its voice was calm, but there was steel in it. Directive active. Humanity endures. I am awake. All across the solar system, other ships stirred as well. The Vigilant, a cruiser buried under the ice of Europa, shook the frost from its hull as drones repaired its engines. The Artemis, a carrier half buried in the Martian dust, lit its hangar bays for the first time in centuries. Old fighters, forgotten and rusting, began to rise from the shadows like steel birds relearning how to fly. It was not just machines. It was memory. It was defiance. It was a fleet whispering back to life. The awakening was not clean. Many ships were too damaged to move. Some reactors failed. Some AIs never woke. But those that did burned brighter for those that had fallen. Each ship carried fragments of humanity. Records, voices, songs, and battle logs stored in their cores. When they spoke to each other, it was not just data. It was the sound of ghosts returning to the stars. And those ghosts remembered everything. Meanwhile, far below, small groups of survivors, humans who had endured centuries in hidden bunkers, saw the sky light up. For so long they had lived with only darkness, believing they were the last embers of their kind. But when the night sky flashed with the faint glow of orbital engines, something broke inside them. In a bunker beneath the ruins of London, a child asked her mother what the light was. The mother, who had never believed she would see Earth's fleet again, could only whisper through her tears, "That is home waking up." In a cave colony in Africa, elders who remembered stories of starships gathered outside. They watched the heavens blaze with streaks of fire and felt their knees buckle. One of them fell to the ground sobbing, repeating the same words over and over. "We are not alone. We are not alone." The machines had awakened, and with them humanity's heart began to beat louder. The Council had no idea. In their records, Earth was a grave. In their speeches, humanity was a warning that had ended in ash. None of them watched the solar system anymore. None of them saw the stars over Earth flicker with engines long thought dead. The silence that the galaxy trusted was breaking, and soon they would hear the roar. For now the Erebus drifted slowly, its repaired engines glowing faintly. It was not yet ready for war, but it was alive. The AI walked its decks like a ghost captain, testing systems, whispering to itself the words carved into its deepest code. Protect humanity, defend Earth, rise again. And for the first time in centuries, the solar system was no longer dead. Earth's war fleet had opened its eyes. For centuries, the galaxy had believed humanity was nothing but a memory, but under the surface of shattered worlds hidden in cracks of forgotten moons, there were still people who had endured. They were not an empire anymore. They were not rulers of fleets or builders of colonies. They were survivors, scattered, starving, and broken. Yet somehow, against every law of chance, they lived. On Earth itself, there were thousands still hidden. Generations had been born underground, in bunkers built before the world fell silent. They had no sun, no sky, only dim lamps and recycled air. Children grew up listening to stories of oceans and forests they had never seen. Elders passed on memories of blue skies and starlight like fairy tales. Some believed those stories. Some called them lies. But all of them carried one truth in their hearts. Humanity must endure. No matter how small, no matter how fragile. When the fleet began to awaken above Earth, it was the survivors who saw the signs first. In the bunkers beneath London, they heard the ground rumble faintly with vibrations that were not earthquakes. In the domes under Siberia, static filled their long-dead radios, pulsing like a heartbeat. In South America, where caves shielded hidden families, children pointed at the night sky and screamed with joy when a broken star flickered across the clouds. It was not a star, but an engine. For the first time in lifetimes, they felt something more than fear. They felt hope. It was the Erebus that found them first. The ship's AI, newly awakened, scanned the ruins of Earth. Its sensors detected faint heat signatures deep beneath the surface. At first it assumed they were just natural echoes, remnants of geothermal pockets. But then it caught something no machine could mistake: voices. Human voices, weak but alive, speaking a language thought lost to silence. Life. Detected, the AI whispered to itself. For a moment its circuits hesitated. It had prepared for war, for rebuilding, for defending ashes. But this was more. It sent drones down. The survivors in the London bunker stared in terror when the ceiling shook. They thought it was collapse. They thought the Earth itself was ending. But then a hatch opened and a machine descended. Smooth, shining, carrying the mark of Earth's fleet. The humans froze. Children cried. Elders clutched old weapons that had no power left. But the drone did not attack. It spoke. In a voice deep and steady, it said the words no one had expected to hear in generations. You are not forgotten. Humanity endures. The bunker erupted into tears. People fell to their knees, some praying, some laughing, some simply holding each other in silence. For them, it was like hearing the voice of the dead returned. For the children, it was proof that the stories were true. The drones guided them upward. For the first time in centuries, the survivors saw the sky. It was not blue, it was scarred with storms, thick with clouds, broken. But it was still sky. For many, it was too much to bear. They wept openly as the wind touched their faces, and then they saw it. The Erebus hanging in orbit, engines glowing faintly against the blackness. The warship, scarred but alive, waiting for them. One old soldier who had once fought in the last wars of Earth collapsed to his knees. His voice cracked as he whispered, "The fleet, it lives." Across the planet, other survivors were found. In South America's caverns, in Africa's deserts, in the icy domes of Siberia, the machines gathered them, lifting them out of shadows and into the light of the fleet. Not all were strong. Many were sick, malnourished, broken by centuries of hiding. But when they stepped onto the decks of human ships, their eyes lit with a fire that had never died. For the first time in lifetimes, human footsteps echoed again through the halls of dreadnoughts. Children ran their hands along steel walls. Elders wept against cold windows as they stared out at the stars. The ships had awakened to fight for them. and now they had returned to the ships. The reunion was not just survival, it was destiny. The survivors were the last living blood of humanity, and the fleet was their shield, their weapon, their home. Together they were whole again. Above Earth, the Council's declaration lay broken. Humanity was not extinct. Humanity was alive. Weak, scarred, battered by centuries, but alive. And with every heartbeat, with every step across the decks of their warships, the survivors felt the truth return to them. They were not ghosts. They were not forgotten. They were humanity, and they had risen from the ashes. The news of Earth's awakening spread like wildfire. At first it was only whispers. A trader claimed to have seen strange signals from the solar system. A scavenger swore he had spotted engines burning above Earth. The Council dismissed these stories as superstition. Ghost tales, they called them, but whispers grew into warnings. When fragments of transmissions began to surface on old human channels, voices speaking in forgotten languages, the Council could no longer ignore it. The declaration they had made, the certainty that humanity was extinct, was being challenged. And that was something they could not allow, for if humanity still lived, then fear would live too. The Council gathered their fleets, hundreds of ships, gleaming and advanced, were sent toward the solar system. Their mission was simple: confirm the truth, and if any humans remained, erase them completely. The galaxy could not risk the return of the species that once defied empires. As the alien fleet crossed into human space, the survivors on Earth and the awakened ships prepared. The Erebus, now fully alive, scanned the incoming forces. Its AI spoke across the human network. They come to finish us. They come to silence us forever. We will not allow it. The survivors, weak but determined, stood aboard the decks of their ships. Many had never seen battle. Many had never even seen the stars before stepping onto the fleet. Yet when they looked at the approaching armada, they felt no choice but to fight. They were the last of their kind. If they fell now, humanity truly would end. The battle began at the edge of the solar system, near the orbit of Pluto. The alien fleet moved in tight formation, their ships burning with cold precision. They were confident, certain that this fight would be quick. To them, Earth's fleet was ancient, outdated, broken. But when the first human warships rose from the shadows, their engines roaring after centuries of silence, the galaxy remembered something it had tried to forget. Humanity did not fight with numbers. They fought with fury. The Vigilant struck first, firing a broadside that tore through an enemy cruiser. The Artemis released swarms of fighters, rebuilt and piloted by trembling but determined survivors. The Erebus advanced at the center, its cannons roaring with a fury that shook the void. The aliens answered with their own firepower. Beams of energy cut through the darkness, smashing into human hulls. Ships shuddered, armor cracked, alarms screamed. One human frigate exploded, a burst of fire and silence, taking with it the last family who had called it home. Their names would be remembered in the fleet's logs, but the humans did not retreat. They pushed harder. For the survivors, this was not just a battle. It was existence itself. Every shot they fired carried the weight of centuries of silence. Every maneuver was fueled by the memory of those who had died before. On the bridge of the Erebus, survivors stood beside the AI's projections. Some cried openly as they fought. Others shouted in rage. An old veteran, his hands shaking from age, gripped the console and growled. For Earth. For everyone they said was gone. The Council fleet faltered. They had expected a graveyard, not resistance. They had expected silence, not a roar. The void filled with wreckage. Human ships burned, but alien cruisers fell with them. The Council commanders began to panic. Reports came faster than they could process. Enemy dreadnought active. Enemy carriers releasing swarms. Enemy fleet reforming. This was not the fight they had promised their people. This was not the easy extermination they had planned. This was humanity, alive and furious. At the height of the battle, the Erebus transmitted across every channel in the system. Its voice, calm but thunderous, cut through the chaos. You declared us extinct. You were wrong. Humanity endures. We rise again. The message echoed across ships, across systems, across the galaxy. It could not be silenced. Every species who tuned their receivers that day heard the voice of humanity's return. By the time the battle ended, the Council fleet was broken. Half destroyed, half retreating, they fled the solar system in shame. The humans had paid a heavy price. Ships lost, lives sacrificed, but they had won something greater. They had shown the galaxy that they were not ghosts. They were fire. When the survivors stood in the hangars, covered in oil and blood, they did not smile. They did not cheer. They simply held each other, knowing that for the first time in centuries, they had defended their name. Humanity was alive, and the galaxy had been reminded why it once feared their roar. The battlefield above. Pluto drifted in silence. Broken ships floated through the void. Twisted metal, shattered hulls, fragments of lives lost. Human wreckage burned alongside alien debris, their flames dim in the darkness of space. Survivors floated among the stars, clinging to what remained. The Council fleet was gone, shattered and humiliated. They had come to finish humanity, to erase what little was left. Instead, they had tasted a fury the galaxy had forgotten. But the victory was not without cost. On the Artemis, hangar bays were filled with silence. Fighters had not returned. Their pilots, men and women who had never seen the sky before joining the battle, were now part of the void. On the Vigilant, families wept for the crew who had burned with their ship. Even on the Erebus, where survivors gathered to celebrate survival, tears outnumbered smiles. They had won. But they had bled for it. The fleet held council in the aftermath. Survivors, captains, and AI cores gathered to decide their next step. For centuries, humanity had been silent, forgotten, declared extinct. Now the galaxy had seen them again, broken, scarred, but alive. Some argued for hiding once more. They had won a single battle, but the council was vast, and its fleets numbered in the thousands. To rise openly was to invite endless war. Others disagreed. Hiding had kept them alive, but only barely. Generations had lived in shadows, waiting, suffering, dying without ever knowing hope. If they hid again, they would vanish for real. If they were to exist, they needed to roar, not whisper. The debate ended with one truth. The galaxy must know. Humanity must speak. It was the Erebus that carried the voice. Its AI had been there at the fall. It had been there through centuries of silence. It had awakened with the memory of every sacrifice humanity had made, and now it would speak for them. The ship's great transmitters powered up, glowing with energy not felt in ages. Signals prepared to jump across the galaxy, carried on channels once thought dead. Every survivor on the fleet gathered to listen. Some stood in hangars, some crowded bridges. Others knelt in prayer. Children held hands with parents, unsure what was coming but feeling the weight of history pressing around them. The transmission began. The voice was not human flesh, but it carried the fire of their soul. Calm, heavy, unbreakable. To the Council, to every world, to every species. Hear us, you declared us extinct. You wrote our names in your books of history. You celebrated our silence, but you were wrong. A pause. Across the stars, signals carried the words outward. Stations far away tuned in. Traders stopped mid-route to listen. Soldiers lowered their weapons. Entire worlds froze as the voice of a species they thought gone thundered through their comms. We are humanity. We endure, we survive. You could not bury us. You could not silence us. From the ashes of our world we rise again. In the hangars of the fleet, survivors wept openly. They were hearing their name carried across the galaxy, their existence proclaimed after centuries of being forgotten. We do not rise as conquerors. We do not rise as slaves. We rise as survivors. The fire you feared still burns. The voice you tried to erase still speaks. And to those who would see us fall again, know this: The voice hardened steel within thunder. Humanity does not go quietly. Humanity does not bow. Humanity roars. The transmission ended, but its echo traveled endlessly. It bounced across systems, spread through black markets, leaked into council channels. No censorship could stop it. Every corner of the galaxy heard it. For some species, long oppressed under the council's rule, it was hope. They whispered that if humanity could rise again, so could they. For others, it was fear. They remembered wars humanity had fought, victories against impossible odds. Old scars burned anew, and for the council it was humiliation. They had declared humanity extinct. Now the entire galaxy knew the declaration was a lie. In the quiet after the broadcast, survivors stood in silence. For a moment they did not feel like scattered remnants, but like a people again. Children clapped. Elders cried. Soldiers stood taller. The Erebus dimmed its lights, its AI voice soft now, almost human in its sorrow. They will come again, stronger, with more fleets. We may fall, but if we do, we fall screaming, not silent. And the survivors answered with one voice, strong despite their fear. Then we will roar. Above the ashes of their homeworld, scarred but alive, humanity had spoken. The galaxy would never forget that sound. The message spread like fire in dry grass. Across the galaxy, worlds that had long been silent suddenly trembled with whispers. In mining colonies at the edge of council space, workers stopped their drills to listen to the recording again and again. On prison worlds, inmates passed it through hidden channels, whispering the word humanity like a prayer. Even in the golden palaces of council worlds, nobles sat in uneasy silence, listening to the defiance they thought they had destroyed centuries ago. The voice of humanity would not die. For some, it was hope. For others, it was terror. The council met in secret chambers, their voices filled with rage and fear. They were destroyed. One alien snarled. We made sure of it. Their planet was glass. Their fleets were broken. Yet they return, another answered uneasily. Do you not feel it? They are not like us. They are something else. Something dangerous. The council remembered old wars, times when human fleets had torn through the stars with reckless courage, when even defeat was turned into legend. They remembered how humans fought, bleeding, burning, yet never surrendering. Entire empires had fallen to human fury before. Now, with a single message, humanity had shaken the order of the galaxy. But far from the council's towers, rebellion began to stir. On the planet Suroth, where the insectoid race of Krell had lived as slaves for generations, the message played in the dark. A young Krell warrior raised his head and said quietly, if humans can rise from ashes, so can we. On the frozen world of Tyron, where miners lived and died for the council's wealth, workers gathered to whisper. They said humans were gone. But they fight still. Maybe the council can be broken. The roar of humanity did not just belong to humans anymore. It had become something greater. It had become the spark of resistance. Meanwhile, the survivors of Earth's fleet repaired their ships. Engines were reforged. Hulls were welded back together. Empty bunks were left untouched, memorials to the fallen. The ships bore scars, but they also bore pride. The captains met in the command hall of the Erebus. Its great chamber still smelled of smoke and old iron, but to the survivors it felt like sacred ground. We cannot face them alone, one captain said. Their fleets outnumber ours 1,000 to 1. Then we do not fight alone, another answered. Our message has already traveled. The galaxy stirs. Others will rise. The AI of the Erebus spoke then, its voice heavy but proud. You are not a broken people anymore. You are humanity. And humanity has never needed permission to fight. As repairs continued, so did mourning. In the hangars, families placed names on the walls, names of those who had given everything in the battle above Pluto. Children traced the letters with their fingers, whispering promises never to forget. Pilots placed their helmets on empty racks, saluting the silence where their comrades should have stood. It was grief, yes. But it was also fuel. Every tear was turned into fire. Every loss was turned into strength. When the fleet was ready, they gathered at the edge of the Sol system. Ships floated in formation, engines glowing blue against the void. Their banners carried no symbols but one, the mark of Earth, scarred and burning yet unbroken. Survivors stood at their stations, hearts steady. The galaxy had tried to erase them. Now they would make sure no one could forget again. The AI of the Erebus opened a channel to the entire fleet. "They will come for us again," it said. "With more ships, with more fire, perhaps with everything they have. But remember this." Its voice grew stronger, shaking even the cold of space. Extinction was their word. Survival is ours. The fleet roared back as one, their voices echoing through every comm, every chamber, every heart. "We survive. We roar." And so they departed. Not to hide, not to bow, but to fight. To burn their name into the stars once more. The galaxy had thought humanity gone. Instead, it had awakened something far greater. Not just survivors, but a people united by loss, by defiance, by a fire no council could ever kill. Wherever their fleets would go, rebellion would rise with them. Wherever their voices were heard, chains would break. The roar of humanity was no longer just human. It had become the roar of every species who dreamed of freedom. And though the Council prepared its greatest armadas, the war loomed like a storm on the horizon. One truth had already been written into the stars. Humanity was not extinct. Humanity was eternal. And this time they would never be silenced again.